All right, today we're going to try to unpack one of the most explosive, challenging, and, let's be honest, profoundly misunderstood books in the history of philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil.
You know, this isn't just a book. It's more like a declaration of war on 2,000 years of Western thought. Nietzsche himself called it his philosophical hammer, and he used it to test, and yeah, pretty often, to shatter the idols of his time, and ours.
So Nietzsche kicks things off not with a statement, but with a question. And wow, what a question. Right from the very first page, he's reframing philosophy. He says it's not some sterile, clean collection of facts, but a clumsy, often arrogant pursuit. He's basically asking, what if we've been trying to conquer truth, when maybe we should have been trying to woo it? And that one little question leads us straight to the dangerous core of this book. Because Nietzsche isn't just questioning a few specific answers here and there. No, he's attacking the very foundation of Western thought, this assumption we all have that truth is always the ultimate goal.
He argues that for centuries, philosophers have acted like dogmatists. They built these gigantic, imposing systems, and he has this great phrase for it. He says they did it with a terrible seriousness and clumsy importunity. Basically, they were aggressively and clumsily shoving their views on everyone, each one claiming they had finally captured the ultimate truth. And this is where Nietzsche just drops the bomb. He hits the brakes and asks, wait a minute, we all say we want the truth, but why? What if this will to truth that's driving all of philosophy is actually just a mask for other deeper desires? What if the will to truth itself is the problem, not the solution?
So who was this guy who dared to ask such a thing? You know, to really understand the hammer, you've got to understand the man who is swinging it.
And here's the profound irony of Nietzsche's life. He was born right into the heart of the very system he would later try to tear down. This guy was the son of pastors from a long line of theologians. He was a flat-out prodigy, a full professor of classical philology at just 24 years old. But his brilliant mind was trapped in a body that gave him nothing but constant pain, leading to a life of really intense solitude and suffering.
This timeline gives you a quick, pretty stark picture of his life's path. You see this rapid rise in the academic world, then he has to resign because he's so sick, and that's followed by a decade of wandering. But it's in that period of intense creativity, fueled by his isolation and illness, that he produces his most famous works. And it all culminates in this tragic mental collapse, which left him silent for the last decade of his life.
So that life, that combination of incredible intellectual discipline and constant physical suffering, it forged a thinker who was just not interested in gentle debate. And this brings us to his first major assault in the book, a chapter he calls Prejudices of Philosophers. And let me tell you, this is not a critique, it's a full frontal attack.
See, Nietzsche doesn't start by building up his own system, he starts by tearing others down. He looks at this grand history of philosophy, Plato, Kant, all the giants, and he argues that their entire project is built on a series of assumptions they never even bother to question.
They all claimed their philosophies were the product of cold, hard, impartial logic. But Nietzsche pulls back the curtain and says, nope, every great philosophy is actually a confession. It's like an unconscious memoir of its author, and it's driven by their own personal biases, their hopes, their fears, and their instincts. This quote just gets right to the heart of it. It's one of the most unsettling questions in all of philosophy. He's asking why we automatically think truth is better than untruth. I mean, who told us that? The entire foundation of science and philosophy is built on this idea that we prefer truth, and Nietzsche is the first one to really stand up and challenge the value of that preference itself. And once you start questioning values that big, it leads you directly to one of his most famous and, yeah, controversial ideas, this distinction he makes between two fundamental types of morality.
So Nietzsche argues there's no such thing as a single universal morality with a capital M. Forget about it. Instead, there are just moralities, plural, and each one is like a language of power, a tool created by a specific group of people to justify their own way of life and, well, to impose their values on everyone else. And he saw two main types come out of this struggle. First, you've got master morality. This is the value system of the nobles, the strong, the rulers. They look at themselves and say, we are good. So good becomes everything that makes them powerful: pride, ambition, strength. But then in total opposition, you have slave morality. This is born from the oppressed, the weak, the people for whom life is suffering. They look at their powerful masters and call them evil. So for them, good becomes everything the master isn't: humility, sympathy, patience, forgiveness.
all the virtues that make being powerless a little more bearable. Now, what's so crucial to understand here is that Nietzsche isn't saying one is better. He's not picking a side. He's acting more like a doctor, diagnosing how these two human-made systems came to be.
Okay, so if we're all caught up in these inherited moral systems, is there any way out? For Nietzsche, the answer is yes, and it lies in a new kind of thinker he calls the free spirit.
You know, the book's subtitle is there for a reason. This whole work is written for these future philosophers. It's a prelude, a kind of training manual for the minds that are strong enough to create the values of tomorrow.
So who is this free spirit? Well, it's the person who can finally step outside the cage of conventional morality. They're these intellectual aristocrats who don't just accept values. They have the strength to actually question them, to look at these big concepts of good and evil and ask, what are you really worth?
These are the people who are truly independent, you know? They aren't looking for one single, comfortable truth. They embrace looking at things from a ton of different perspectives. They understand morality for what it is, a human, maybe an all too human, invention. They're both thinkers and creators, philosophers and rulers, as Nietzsche puts it. And crucially, they have to be able to handle the immense loneliness that comes with thinking differently from everybody else.
And this is the ultimate point. The free spirit isn't immoral. They're beyond morality as we've always understood it. They are the ones who have the courage to create their own values and to live by them, to truly live beyond that simple inherited black and white view of good and evil.
So Nietzsche's work is not a comfortable read. It's a challenge, by design. He used his hammer to test the foundations of everything he was taught to believe. And the question he leaves for us, the one that kind of echoes from this book, is a simple one. If you took that hammer to your own most deeply held beliefs, which of them would survive?